Hello, welcome to Carnegie House Online. I'm James, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. You probably know him best from Radio 2 as Jeremy Vine's Allotment Guru. Please welcome Mr. Terry Walton. Hello, Terry.
Hello, James. Nice to be here. It's a strange way to actually have an interview, but we gradually, during this lockdown, getting more and more technological advanced, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So how have you been spending lockdown? What have you been up to over the past, 10 or 11 weeks now?
Yeah, 10 weeks, about 10 weeks is all I can remember. Well, you get into a routine, that's the problem. I mean, I don't usually spend every morning at the allotments because I usually have other events taking place. But all I can do now is every morning get up, a little bit of breakfast, travel the short distance to my allotment, spend the morning there doing my gentle exercise, getting my fresh air, getting my social counselling, and socially distancing from all my mates. That's the biggest problem. Whereas we normally meet in the little cafe we have on the allotment, nobody's allowed in there at the moment, so we sit all alone, at least 4 meters. We're more than doubling the list, and we have to be away, drink our coffee, and shout our remarks from a distance. But the routine is settling down. But I do miss the up close camaraderie.
Well, absolutely. I'm guessing from our little chats together that it's not a quiet time up there, even if you are socially distancing at the moment. I'd imagine you're still chatting away, even over a distance.
Yeah, the banter still goes on. I mean, usually you put things in and people say, "Why are you bothering? God, they look dreadful," and you get wound up every time you do anything. But it's not quite as good as being close up over a cup of coffee when we're taking a natural break. But it keeps the spirits high anyway.
Oh, absolutely. And that's really important at the moment, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
So can I ask you, I understand you got your first allotment when you were 11. What got you into gardening at such a relatively early age? And why did you take on an allotment then? And what did you grow?
Well, really, it started when I was 4. My father we had the allotments, was about 100 yards from my front door. My father disappeared over the day, and he was very stubborn about what I do myself now. And then one day my mother said, "Tom, take this boy out from under my feet and take him over the allotments." So he gave me a little corner by his shed, and he dug it over and I raked it, and he gave me a couple of packets of seeds, and I planted those packets of seeds, and I was quite amazed on this bit of bare ground. After a couple of weeks, little green shoots start growing, and within the space of 6 to 8 weeks, I harvested my first crop of radish, and I was only 4-year-old. And that really, I used to enjoy going over every day, playing on this bit of ground. And I did that for many years, and I became 11, and I was all grown up. And this plot became available on the allotment site. And I told my father, I want my own plot. So I actually applied. And in those days, it's a long, long time ago, there was a very strict regime of committee men. And I went before them expecting to be blackballed. But they said, "Oh, go on, give the boy a chance." And then they gave me the allotments, which was the furthest away from the gate and the hardest one to get to. I was only 11-year-old, so they felt I was fitter than most of these retired ex-miners. So I started working away, and they thought, well, this is going to be a little fad. Give him a couple of months. He'd want to go and play football with the boys, do this, that, and the other. But I was making a good shot of it. So they all started gathering around me, and then information after information and tip after tip came. And I just grew my vast knowledge from the University of Life on this plot. And that really got me into it. And then the 1960s came along, and supermarkets became the vogue. People were dropping out of allotments because they could get it cheaper and easier from a supermarket. So I moved from one plot through a gradual progression until I had 10 plots. I had 10 plots on the go at one time. And my father still had 2 as well. So this became a little entrepreneurship for me, because we grew everything we had. So I thought, well, I can make a few bob as a young teenager here. And but you're not allowed to sell from the allotments. That's one of the strict rules. So what I used to do on a Friday night, gather all my vegetables, put them into boxes I got from a local greengrocer, and I go around the door and I tap on the door, and the lady of the house come on. She said, "Yeah, what do you want, Terry?" I said, "I got these vegetables here, Mr. Jones, if you're interested." "How much are they?" I said, "The vegetables are free, Mr. Jones, but the box is 2 and 6.
That's brilliant. That's true entrepreneurship, isn't it? I love that. That's brilliant.
But that really then got me into it, and I carried this on along for many, many years with these 10 plots. And then a woman comes into my life. I fall in love. I get married. I have 2 kids. Work gets in the way. I still love the allotments, but gradually I dropped my empire down to just 2 plots. And then eventually, when my father died, I took over his 2, and that was, I carried on for a few years, and they were getting a bit difficult with work and everything else. And then when it just inside the gate, the second plot became vacant. And 22 years ago, I moved onto that plot, and I've retained that 1 plot ever since. But it's the size of a lawn tennis court, so it's quite a sizable bit of land.
Wow, it's not bad at all, is it? That's
No.
that's lovely.
No.
And so, in a few minutes, we'll have a look at your allotment and your greenhouse and some films that you shot for us. So we'll get to have a proper look around. I'm just wondering, what advice then would you give to younger viewers, people, or people just getting interested in gardening now? How would you start out now?
How do you start out? Well, the best thing to do is, a lot of them now are not full-size allotments like I've got. A lot of allotments have cut down to half sizes now, which is much more manageable for young families and for people in work. Or if you've got a bit of back garden, you can dabble your toes in there first of all in the water, and then start growing small. But the important bit is always start with something simple. Yeah. Always grow things you want to eat. Because one of the worst questions I ever asked is, what can I grow? It's not about growing something you don't like. Grow something you like. And again, I always say, it's a hobby, not a race. Do a little bit, plant a bit, move forward, and then step back, attack the weeds, look after what you put in, move forward a bit further. It's like eating an elephant. Eat it a leg at a time.
That's great advice. That's great advice. So you became an organic gardener, I understand, the late 1960s. And is that something you carry on today? And
yes,
then,
absolutely.
Yeah, and then what are the positives? And are there any negatives to being an organic gardener?
Then there are well, I won't call them negatives. You have to be more vigilant, and you have to spend time looking. When you go around and use all these insecticides and chemicals and God knows what, once you've done them, the pests are gone, but so are your friends and allies in the insect world as well. But when you're organic, you have to wander around the plot almost on a daily basis. And if a crop looks as if it's beginning to suffer, there's usually something attacking it. And that's the time to hit it in the early stage of attack. And you only got certain things at your armory. And again, if you've got flying pests, you can pump up a water sprayer, wash them away, and that keeps them at bay. And if you've got things like caterpillars, you can pick them off. And you have to go around and do everything by hand. There's no quick solution. But it gives you, at the end of the day, it gives you that satisfaction. And knowing when you harvest that crop, take it home, it's got no residual chemicals in it at all. It is perfectly safe to eat, and it's not doing you any long-term damage.
That sounds marvellous. So I know in the introduction I mentioned that you are, of course, the Allotment Guru on Jeremy Vine's show on Radio 2. How did that come about?
Well, one of the strange coincidences in life. And I mean, whenever I was in work, one of the first escapes when I go home was to spend an hour on the allotments to unwind. And I retired in 2001. Prematurely, I wasn't old enough, but the company got changed and everything else, and I fell by the wayside. And I thought, okay, well, this is what life's going to bring. I'll just enjoy myself on the allotment, and that's what's going to happen. Anyway, in 2003, Jimmy Young retires, and along comes this little whippersnapper, Jeremy Vine, to take over the show. And he'd been doing it about a month, and he did a show on allotments on a Friday afternoon. And he was amazed by the enthusiasm and the niceness, for the use of a better word, of allotmenteers. And tongue-in-cheek at the end of the show, he said, oh, we ought to get out more and adopt allotments. Any of you listeners who want their allotments adopted, please write in. Well, I'm never there. I'm always on the allotment. My wife's an avid Radio 2 fan. So I come home and she said, well, Jeremy Vine wants to adopt an allotment. Why didn't you get him to adopt yours? You're always on the thing. You're always there with it. You can't garden on the radio. What a silly idea that is. That's not going to work. No, I can't do that. Anyway, I got 2 boys who got on the scene. And so I sat down on my computer and I sent in a numerous email. And lo and behold, 3 weeks later, I get this phone call. I come home from the allotments. It was 3 o'clock, sitting down with a cup of coffee. My wife comes running in with the phone and says, it's a Jeremy Vine show for you. I said, yeah, Jeremy Vine show. I picked up the phone. This young lady was in the end. I said, how's Keith? She said, who the hell is Keith? I said, my mate was paying you to wind me up and tell me you're from the Jeremy Vine show. So this silly conversation took place for a minute or so. Before the penny dropped, I said, you are from the Radio 2? Yes, she said. So I better take it serious, So we had this long chat. And apparently there were 600 interviewees for this job. And I said, well, why did you pick me? She said, well, we asked everybody the same question. Tell me about your allotments. 599 said, what do you want to know? Half an hour later, I couldn't shut you up. So you obviously were enthusiastic, and that's why I was selected. Yeah, that's where it all came about. And that was now, that is now coming in, well, that was 2003, so this is now its 17th year.
Fantastic. And do you still enjoy it?
Oh, thoroughly enjoy it. Thoroughly enjoy it. You're doing something you enjoy doing. You're spreading the passion. Hopefully then some of the listeners will pick up the hobby as well. If you can convert one per show, then you have done your job. And it's brilliant, and I thoroughly enjoy it. Still get nervous, still have to work out the topics, but generally it's very, very relaxed and thoroughly enjoyable. And Jeremy and I know how to feed off each other now, so it's all the rough edges are gone now. It works very well.
So I think as we've talked about the allotment now, it's time to have a look. So why don't we take a quick tour around your allotment and around your greenhouse?
Welcome to Terry Walton and Jeremy Vine's Shared Allotments. First of all, we're going to give you a look around my greenhouse, which you can see shortly is quite chock-a-block. There's some lettuce there, ready, bringing on for cutting. In the corner, a cucumber. Hidden behind them are some Cape gooseberries. And along here, my tomatoes. And I'm quite proud at the moment because there's quite a few tomatoes now basically forming along there. Come along with more spring onions, tomatoes, an aubergine, carrots. In the corner, yet another cucumber. And those plants you see there are my pesky terrant. They are Coleus canina, which are used to keep out the aphids. Some more Cape gooseberries, and yet another cucumber. And along here, more tomatoes, an aubergine, more spring onions, more lettuce. The important bit with lettuce, keep sowing because you want the succession. And then along here, then more tomatoes. In the collar, one little lonely melon, one little lonely chili, 2 aubergines. And there are my peppers going up quite tall, up off the ground, looking really, really well. So you can see it's a pretty packed greenhouse and pretty full. Anyway, give you a look at the plot now. And we should start at the bottom. Where's my compost heap? I'm sitting there quite happily on there. To roam around is my pumpkin. And behind me here is my shallots, my garlic and onions, all looking extremely healthy, all looking well. Next to them are some second early potatoes, which got plenty of foliage. And now coming to my favourite vegetable, the pea. You can never get enough peas. 1 row of peas, 2 row of peas, 3 row of peas. And then gently over here are the sweet corn, and above that the salad crop, looking quite well there. And alongside them yet more peas. Behind you in the drums are some parsnips, and in my veggie truck over there more parsnips. And next to these, they were hit back a while ago and by the sharp frost in May are my early potatoes, but the growth has come back. Next to them, the broad beans, again looking really, really well and getting extremely close to harvesting now. You can see the beans on there, lots and lots of beans forming quite well. So should be harvesting next weekend, ready for the first feed of the summer. But up here then we have the French beans, the climbing runner beans, a good row of beans right across there, plenty. Strawberries, just starting to form the strawberries. The frame in place, ready to put over the net, stop the birds feeding on them. Next to them then are my leeks. For 1 row of leeks have got their feet in. One I planted recently is suffering in this heat, and yet another row to go in once this goes. Under the net there, keeping it free of pests and Brussels sprouts. And alongside here are my main crop potatoes, which are going to see me through the winter. And yet more barrier. Under there is my brassica net. All my brassicas, I hope you can see through there, are my Brussels sprouts, my cauliflowers, my cabbages, all being kept free from butterflies and any flying cabbage root fly and aphids, all happy under there. And coming alongside here are my carrots. You can see the carrots actually starting to come up under there. Get more netting to keep off the carrot root fly. And behind them, my wife's favourite plants, the sweet peas, just starting to send up flowers. They are looking good. And then coming up the path, more strawberries just starting to form. So we're into July now, strawberries and cream time. And then marrow and courgettes, some rhubarb in the distance, a few more onions and a few more parsnips all growing there. And along the top of the plot, the bees' favourite, the poached eggplant or the manthes, which attracts all the bees to my plot. So there we are, a quick visit around Terry and Jeremy's plot. Stay safe, keep happy, keep gardening. Bye.
So that's a look around Terry's allotment and greenhouse. Thank you for that, Terry. So now we've got some questions from members of our Facebook group spread across South Wales. We're going to start with a question from John from Penavai. Is it true that you do not need to water potatoes and onions as frequently as other veg?
It's partly true. Onions and potatoes, you can get away with watering about twice a week in these very, very dry periods. And again, with root crops, you don't need to water. Once they're about 4 inches high of foliage, never water root crops, let them go down. And again, the things that need most of the water are courgettes, pumpkins, marrows, beans, peas, anything which is flowering and making a fruit, something which is podded. They need to be watered almost daily when it's extremely dry. But potatoes, again, when they start to flower, and it keeps particularly dry, but once a week at least, give them one tremendous soaking, because a potato needs lots of moisture because the tuber is largely water. With onions, yeah, again, the drier they are, the less you're going to get diseases, fungal diseases. And again, if you're going to water onions on a sporadic basis, it's best to water them in the morning. So the foliage then will dry off by the evening and you won't get fungal diseases forming like rust and downy mildew and that sort of thing, which tend to form on anything which is in the onion family.
Great. Thank you, Terry.
Yeah.
So then a question from Mark in Tondi. What fertiliser do you recommend?
What fertiliser? There's only one. It's all what you put in the soil to start. I mean, during the winter months, we'll visit local stables with bags, bring in plenty of rotting farmer manure, make all my own compost, and that goes in to the ground in the late part of winter and dug in. And then I also when I'm actually planting, I use some bags of the dried fertilizer manure, which you can buy, and I spread that on. I use a particular material called Remin volcanic dust, which I work in because that puts lots of nutrients in. And I use bloodfish and bone about a week before planting. And that's the basis of getting the ground ready. Once the crops are growing, I then use a mixture of liquid feeds, some of my own making from nettles and from comfrey. And I do regularly give them a feed of seaweed extract. I use a particular one from Envy called Sea Feed Extract, which got other nutrients added as well. And I prefer to use liquid feeds when the crops are growing because it goes straight to the roots, gives them an instant feed. But that's my normal feeding regime. Most of it's produced naturally. The rest is then added later on.
And so the preparation of the soil plays a big part in the success that you get from your...
Yeah, and again, you have to look at that. You never dig manure in where you're growing root crops because they then tend to fork instead of forming the straightforward roots. But plenty of manure under things like beans and peas, and the things like potatoes and onions and all those. But in root crops, keep away from that. And again, I use in my brassica patch when I'm growing all my cabbages, no manure, but I use plenty of natural lime. And that makes the pH higher, which reduces clubroot, which is a disease, fungal disease, affects the roots of all brassicas.
So this question comes from Alison in Bettus. We have a very large bay tree at the back of the garden. After the birds have finished nesting, how hard can we cut it back? It's about 6 meters high and 2 meters wide.
You can cut it back very hard indeed. I mean, they start off with little bushes, and people don't realize when they buy a little bay used for the kitchen use, they go out and take the odd leaves. But over several years, this gets into quite a tall structure. But you can cut it back because it will shoot again quite well. It's not one of these things you've got to be afraid of cutting back too hard. It will come back every time. It's quite a virulent tree and it will keep growing.
So from Karen in Nantamoyle, I'd like to know the best way to support pea plants, please.
The best form is twigs from a hedgerow. And the best of all are privet. You see anybody, if you're driving around, and when this lockdown is gone, obviously, if you're going around anywhere and you see somebody cutting a privet edge, go and be nice to them, because I always take those privet sticks home, dry them, and they make the perfect way of making them grow up. But I can never get enough. I do grow one row of chicken netting. So chicken netting is quite a good thing. They need somewhere they can grip onto for their tendrils. With privet edge or any twigs from any kind of hedging, don't forget you've got to get these in the winter when everything's dormant before birds start nesting as well. And you want them to dry out, because otherwise when you put them in the ground, you'll have a natural privet edge instead of a row of peas. So they will shoot again. So make sure they dry.
Okay, so we've got two questions now that are kind of linked, I think. So I'll ask them both if that's okay at the same time.
Yeah.
So Beryl from Haverfordwest asks, not at all creative or unique, this question, but what do you think is the best way to get rid of slugs without killing other wildlife? And Kevin from Mysteg asks, I've grown dahlias for the first time and they've been attacked by slugs. I've used Slugs Be Gone granules, but they do not seem to work. Any suggestions?
Yeah, I find the one thing that's really solved this for me, it's not a cheap alternative, but there's a product on the market called Nemaslug. What these are, you buy them in a powdered form, you mix them up in your watering can, you water them onto the ground, and you set free, and I mean millions of nematodes. These nematodes seek out the slug and feed on it. They actually go in through the blowhole in the back of the slug and breed inside, and they keep the slug population down to a minimum. They have to go on when the ground is above 4 degrees, which is usually around April. The ground needs to be wet because these things need to traverse around the ground. This year has not been a good year for them, because you put them on, they're not going to survive because the ground is dry, going quite down. But I find that works. Most of these barriers, and they mentioned earlier about this barrier, work temporarily when they dry, but once they get wet and break down, the slugs come around them. But if you want a simpler solution, and it's not the best, but it is non-toxic and won't affect wildlife, there are organic slug pellets based on ferrous phosphate, which you can put down. The slug will eat, go back into the ground and die and rot away in the ground, so it's not poisonous and the wildlife won't pick it up. So I would start off with nematodes. You can use these if you wish. And the other thing you can do, of course, is go out late at night with a balaclava, a flashing light with a big torch, shine it between the eyes. When they blink, stab, and now you've got one dead slug.
Moving on then, David from Aberkenvig. When you're hoeing small weeds on the allotment, is it best to get rid of them or to leave them to decompose organically?
If you're hoeing them during the weather as we've been having lately, where it's extremely warm, I always recommend to hoe in the morning. And particularly if they're annual weeds, take a shallow cut which severs the green from the root. Leave that green fall to the ground. The midday sun and the afternoon sun will shrivel those up. They act as a natural mulch. If they get a bit too large, then wet the ground a bit, pull them out, roots and all. If they're annual weeds, they can go to the compost heap. If they're perennial weeds such as dandelions, dock, buttercup, get rid of those because they can't compost. They'll only come back to haunt you. But again, if you go through on a warm morning when you know the afternoon's going to be sunny, it's quite a pleasant task and there's no hard work involved at all.
So the second question is, this is another similar one. Can you ever get rid of weeds completely from your garden or allotment? That's from Bill in Wildmill.
This year, yes. I've spent so much time there this year and the weather's been so great, there's hardly a weed to be seen anywhere. And but most years you will have some of them. They keep coming back. I mean, the allotment is in good shape now because most of the plots are, well, all the plots are let. So we don't get so much weed seed coming around, but it still finds its way back. You dig it over, it's dry, nothing, you get the first shower of rain, and you think, where have all these weeds come from? They seem to last centuries in the ground. But there is no simple way with them. You just keep attacking them. You never get rid of them. You keep them under control.
Just keep going at it.
Yeah. Just keep going at it.
Fab. So this is a question from Peter. He says, my grass has gone very dry at the moment with lack of rain. Should I be watering my lawn every night?
Leave it alone. My front lawn at the moment looks yellow and parched. That won't hurt it. It's given a dormant rest. When we get the first rainfall come back, that will soon spring back. I would never waste water unless you're an avid lawn fan and you just cannot see it suffer, then water it. And even then, you've got to use a tremendous amount of water to keep that green. And I'm quite happy to let nature take its course. When it's stressed, it goes yellow. As soon as it gets a fall of rain and the temperature drop, it'll be back to green.
Great. So Keith from Ogmore Vale asks, should you really feed plants or should you let them grow naturally?
I have to feed them to some degree. You have to, I mean, they're like all of us. I mean, if you got a small child, you don't feed it, it doesn't grow a lot, does it? You know, it's got to be, and the plants are the same. If you've got a small plant, leave them start to grow, but then particularly if you're growing in tubs and baskets and anything else, you've got to get a lot of feed in, because people don't realize that compost only contains about 6 weeks of nutrients, which allows the plants to start off. After that, it's depleted completely. So if you're growing in tubs or containers, then you need to water and feed at least 2-3 times a week in the soil. Even then, to keep them healthy, keep them going, I feed at least once a week. And some of the crops, the more greedy crops, such as the cucurbits, the courgettes, the pumpkins, and things like beans and peas, they are the lucky ones. They get 2 feeds a week as well.
Good advice. So this one from Denise in Brinkethan. My cherry tree has lots of blossom and develops small fruits about this time of year. They then shrivel up and drop off the tree. Why? What can I do about it?
Right. What you got to do is keep that, believe it or not, keep it very, very wet. I would go out there most nights with a hose pipe and soak the base of that. Another thing which is useful to making sure the fruits stay on, when it's breaking leaf in March, get some potash feed, and I use sort of what you add from a burning wood, because that's got plenty of potash. But if you're not particularly strictly organic, then you can buy a potash mix, put it at the base of that tree. That helps the fruit set and makes the fruit grow much better. What it tends to be is a potash deficiency if the fruit drops off or extremely dry. Or if you're unlucky, when they're quite small, along comes his blackbird and she pinches them before they're ready.
So another fruit-related question. When should I pick figs while they're green? Will they ripen off the bush, or should I wait till they go purple?
Never ripen figs off the bush. Always get them fully ripe on the bush. They do not ripen when picked. They're not like tomatoes. You can pick them semi-ripe, put them on a windowsill and they ripen. If you pick figs off, they will cease ripening. That's a quite simple answer, no.
Great, there we go. Fine. So then on to the final question then. This is from Bob in Aberkenvig. It's a bit of a long one. So, when the frost was playing havoc a couple of weeks ago, my runner beans suffered. A number went very brown and were obviously dead, but several more seemed to only be partially caught and have since revived. However, many of these have blushed, and now they've grown and now have 2 or 3 growing tips. What should I do with these? Should I pinch them all out except the strongest looking tips, or should I do something else?
No, be greedy. What you've basically done is made lots of shoots come out. What it's done is killed the frost, has nipped the main tendril coming up in the middle. But what happens then when that's gone, at the leaf nodes, new tendrils come out. And I tend to plant my beans more than one to a stick anyway. And I let them all fight, and that makes a big bushy plant that gives you a lot more beans. No, let all those tendrils curl up the stick together and they will be perfectly all right. And again, you know, because he's lost some by the sound of it, some never came back at all, he'll need these extra growth to give him the extra beans and the extra feed he needs.
Thank you so much for joining us today and for taking us around your allotment. And I have to ask, on the video, you've got a lot of aubergine growing. Is that your favourite thing to grow?
No. No. It's just a fact. It was just the fact that I put a packet in and there was a tremendous amount of them. All gardeners are very reluctant to waste anything. Nobody on the allotments loves growing aubergines, so I couldn't get rid of my surplus plants. So I landed up having an excess of aubergines. So any Carnegie House fans who love aubergines, around about August, get in touch. There may be an aubergine surfeit I can get rid of.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, as I say, so much for joining us today, Terry. Really appreciate the chat, and it's great to talk to you. And thank you for answering the questions, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Okay, James, take care. Keep happy, keep safe, keep gardening.